Personal story segment tonight, NBC sportscaster Bob Costas. As you may know, there was some controversy over his comments about Putin during the Olympic coverage.
Just in the past year, Putin brokered a deal to allow Syria to avoid a U.S. military strike by giving up its chemical weapons, and helped bring Iran to the negotiating table over its nuclear intentions. And he has repeatedly showcased his confidence to take on the West, particularly the United States.
Now, that was on February 6. 2 weeks later, Mr. Costas said this.
While in many significant ways Russian citizens have better lives than Soviet citizens of a generation ago, theirs is still a government which imprisons dissidents, is hostile to gay rights, sponsors and supports a vicious regime in Syria, and that's just a partial list. No amount of Olympic glory can mask those realities.
Here now is Bob Costas.
Hey, Bill.
So you don't think the initial Putin coverage to you, when you get attacked on talk radio on some cable...
Yeah, only in certain precincts, predictably.
Right, but you know everybody gets it if you're as big as you are. Mm-hmm. But you don't think that was fair?
No, because it was entirely out of context. I was reluctant to come on. I come on out of respect to you. You've always been fair to me, but I run the risk of amplifying what should be a non-issue. This is a controversy only for those looking for the most flimsy pretext for a controversy and a kind of cut and paste thing that isn't even journalism. That was not a profile of Putin. It was a setup to a conversation in which Putin would immediately be called an autocrat, and his desire to expand the former Soviet empire, now the Russian empire, his desire to make his nation more and more influential and consequential on the international stage. That was the whole thing. Not an hour later, not after a commercial, contiguous to it.
Okay.
All right. So there was nothing. There was
But why
nothing.
get involved with politics at all? You guys were over there to cover the games. I mean, why even bother with this stuff?
In fact, on behalf of my colleagues at NBC and Mark Lazarus, who runs NBC Sports now, we did exactly what we said we were going to do. We would frame the backdrop against which these Olympics took place. Each of the first two nights, in the first minute, in a broad sense, I laid it out. Then we brought on David Remnick. Whether people think he leans left or not, he is an expert on Russian history and Russian politics. And we talked about these being Putin's games. The 1984 Olympics weren't Ronald Reagan's games. They were Peter Uberov's. The 96 Olympics were Billy Payne's, not Bill Clinton's. The 2002 Olympics were Mitt Romney's, not George Bush's. These were Putin's games. And as I said in the last piece, which you showed, but only a portion of, if, in fact, they were successful, which briefly, before what's going on in Ukraine, they appeared to be on their way to being successful, it would burnish the image of a man in a regime whose image does not deserve to be burnished.
All right, let me back that up with a clip. I mean, because what you're saying is that you were critical of Putin
repeatedly,
even while discussing his influence on the games. Roll the tape we have.
I don't know of any American, David, no matter where they may fall on the political spectrum, who views Vladimir Putin as some sort of peacemaker or a benign figure.
Okay. Now, once you got that out, were there any retractions? Anybody say, look, we're sorry, we portrayed Costas as a left-wing guy and all of that?
No, and as a matter of fact, all that and much, much more is on NBCOlympics.com, was immediately, so far as I know, is still
so
there.
You think you got hosed by these guys?
I'm talking about repeatedly and straightforwardly, either in questions to guests, including Thomas Bach, the head of the IOC, or in statements of my own. I talked about corruption as endemic in Russia, including as part of these games. I talked about the jailing of dissidents. I talked about their horrible human rights record. In fact, I said to Thomas Bach, are you comfortable having the Olympic flame burning over Vladimir Putin's Russia, where they have such a horrible human rights record?
And what did he say?
He said, we don't want to get into politics, blah, blah, blah. And I asked him about the two of the last four Olympics being in problematic regimes like China and Russia. I also talked about their alliances with Syria and with Iran. I talked to President Obama about whether or not he can possibly work with this truculent character. Obama had said he wanted to reset the relationship with Russia.
That's clearly not working.
No, it's not working. Even things to tweak the U.S., like not allowing U.S. couples to adopt Russian orphans. Vladimir Putin,
I mean, all the way down
Vladimir
the line,
Putin is, as most people here in this building believe, this is not a left, right, or center thing. Vladimir Putin is a former KGB operative.
Yeah, he's a villain.
He's a villain. He is an adversary.
Did you meet him? Did you deal with him?
I did not meet him. We asked for an interview with him.
And he wouldn't do it.
Either me, Brian Williams, Matt
Did the
Lauer,
Russian hierarchy that was, skulking around give you guys a hard time?
No.
Oh, they did.
They did
so
not.
you could do what you wanted?
Well, part of the time, just circumstantially, I was confined to my hotel because I had that eye problem.
Right, so nobody wanted to be near you.
No one wanted to be near me.
All right, that's why Putin wouldn't go.
Right, including Kremlin operatives didn't want to be near me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you had leprosy.
Well, so
no,
did
I did.
for a while.
I did. I was going to call the ghost of Father Damien back to heal you. All right, I got to hold you over again, so I don't want to. But I got some more questions about how NBC in Russia dealt with this thing and whether whether we should have the Olympics there anyway. All right, so I'm going to hold Costas over. Then Goldberg, who Costas knows, actually dined with him. It's amazing.
I've dined with you as well.
No, you haven't.
Really? I have proof.
I picked up the tab.
Well,
all right, okay. There, I blew my cover.
Yeah.
So Goldberg is going to talk about how the far left is going to spin the Ukraine crisis. All right. So it's Costas, Goldberg, and we'll be right back. Continue now with NBC sportscaster Bob Costas. Now, with all the trouble, do you think the Olympic Committee made a mistake going to Russia in the first place? They could have gone to Austria. They wanted Salzburg wanted the games,
I asked Thomas Bach whether or not the Olympics should have as part of its charter at least minimum adherence to basic human rights and maybe even require that it be held in democratic states. His argument was that by putting it in various places, we push these states in positive directions. Yeah. I don't see evidence of that in Beijing or in Moscow. I see no evidence of that.
When you were dealing with the Chinese as opposed to the Russians, who is more difficult to deal with, the Chinese or the Russians?
Again, my experience, just to be honest, in Russia was limited because of my own circumstances. The security was very, very tight, as it had to be. The Olympics, the IOC chose to put this. Terrorism is always an issue ever since '72 in Munich, but they put it in a place where essentially the terrorists are indigenous, so now they had to have this ring of steel that extended out like 30 miles. So other than having to go through the security, where everyone was extremely polite.
And they didn't tell you, look, we don't want you messing with this or that, you got to do it our way. No. They have minders following you around? Anybody know?
No, I don't know if our phone was tapped or my room was bugged.
Because that's what the reports were.
I don't know that for sure.
All the tweets were being monitored. And you couldn't shower, right? Nobody could shower up or what?
Well, I think that many people showered in the dark and then just fumbled around for
Did they roll in the snow?
For a bathroom.
Well, why couldn't the showers work? What was that deal?
No, in our hotel, the hotel that the NBC people were in, everything was fine. We were treated well. The people were friendly. There was no problem in that respect. But what I tried to do judiciously, because I think that some of these things are important. Just as in '96, when China came in the Parade of Nations, I said they've been readmitted to the Olympics. If any nation can duplicate what the old Eastern Bloc and the old Soviet Union did with a sports machine, they can. There have been charges of doping systematically. They could have gotten the 2000 games, but for human rights violations. Nobody on the right was upset by that. It was relevant. They just liked it. They weren't upset when I said in London that the IOC should have acknowledged the 40-year anniversary of the Munich massacre. The right wasn't bothered by that because they liked it. I wasn't politicizing the games. What I said was pertinent. And what I said about Putin during these games in Russia was pertinent. It was judicious. It didn't get in the way of the competition. And selecting this one thing out of context completely misstates my position.
I said that night, I want you to react to this. I said that night that I know you and you're not some raving lunatic leftist, all right?
I'm not.
You're basically a baseball guy. You know, when you were a kid, you collected baseball cards. You weren't studying Herbert Hoover like I was.
Yeah, but you know what?
So you're not...
Just because
there he is, he's a baseball card.
And that's not rehearsed.
That is not rehearsed.
Hey.
All right. So you're not
doesn't mean that I don't know that Herbert Hoover
but you're not smart enough to be an ideologue, all right? You're a baseball kid.
Hey, listen.
All right.
Line up some ideologues and tell me how smart some of these clowns are.
Okay. So I said he's not an ideologue.
Right. You were right about that.
If I were doing a narration, I would have rewritten it. I would not have said that about Putin.
You know what?
Last word.
In retrospect, I wish that I had said what I said to Remnick 5 seconds later, which is no one views him as a statesman, but I knew that was going to happen contiguously. All we were trying to say was that he was an influential and formidable
and that's
figure.
fine.
You know, when Time magazine named Nikita Khrushchev Man of the Year in 1957, no one thought that Henry Luce was a communist.
I did.
when they named Reagan and Andropov Co-Men of the Year in '83, no one thought that they were equally admirable characters. That was the sole purpose of this. It's all on NBCOlympics.com.
All right.
By the way, this is going to be the last word.
One.
John McCain, who, like most Americans, I respect and admire, and with whom I've had a very cordial relationship. John McCain was improperly briefed about what I had said. He is rightly worked up over what's going on in Syria and was about to happen in Ukraine, and he said some things about me that were ill-considered. I called his office to set the record straight. When he called me back, other than hello, before I could say one word other than hello, he said, "Bob, I apologize. I have seen what you said in full context."
Well, and the senator is like that.
He then tweeted a link to some of the things I've said. It increased my respect for him. I am not holding my breath, despite the fact that there's a mountain of evidence like this. Just go to NBCOlympics.com. I'm not holding my breath, waiting for some others to say, you know what, we got this one not a little wrong, we got it completely wrong.
All right, Bob Costas, everybody, there he is. We come right back. Goldberg on how the left is going to spin Ukraine. Then want to Mary Catherine on what they would personally do to Putin. Can't wait for Mary Catherine on that. Moments away.